Welcome to But Enough About Me, a podcast about other people. My name is Tyler Andrews. I'm a Nashville-based photographer, husband, and father. I'm trying to collect the stories of everyone around me, whether we're best friends or total strangers. I want to know what made you the person you are today. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. I am recording this 15 minutes after I should have already posted the episode. I'm so sorry. Sometimes I get behind, but I think you'll forgive me because most of you are asleep right now anyway. This is the middle of the night, and this is when I typically post things. But anyway, details you don't need to know about. Okay, you just calm down. You just enjoy this episode because this episode is a very good friend of mine. He and I and John Thatcher, who was on the show previously, and a bunch of other folks, we all had a church small group for a very long time, and we walked through a lot of life together. So I have gotten to know this man pretty well. He is a husband and a father. He has 5 beautiful kids, all of whom are as intelligent as he is, which is a terrifying thing because he's probably the smartest man I know. Side story, am I the only one who is terrified that he is the dumbest person in the room? Like, that's a really deep-seated insecurity of mine, and every time today's guest is in the room, I know that's true. So, just brace yourself. He's smarter than me. Today's guest is an immigrant to this country. He came here working in the music industry and through a long twisty road that he will tell you about, eventually ended up back into software engineering, and now he works with one of the biggest companies in the world. He works for Google. But he didn't even really touch on that because, Google, right? It's just whatever, Google. Anyway, sorry. Can you tell I get loopy late at night? It's been a long day. I should not be recording late at night. Anyway, guys, I'm so excited for you to meet my very good friend, Mr. Ben Hockey. That's a little more natural because now I can see you.
Yes, I can't see you, but I wasn't happy with the angle I was getting before. So
you're the professional. So, Ben.
Yes.
When were you born?
I was born in 1976 in Australia, in a city called Brisbane, and I lived there for probably the first 2 years of my life, and then my parents moved to another city called Cairns, which was about 1,200 miles north of Brisbane.
Not the one in France.
No, a different one, spelt differently, and this one has an R in it, but
wait.
You can't hear that as I say it.
Say it again. Yes, it's got an R. How do you spell it?
Cairns.
And it's said Cairns.
Cairns.
All right. Tell me about your folks.
My mom and my dad are we're a Christian family. That's pretty defining for what we are for our family. My mom was a school teacher for part of my life, and my dad has, for the most part, sold earth-moving machinery, excavators, backhoes, bulldozers, that type of thing. Actually, the reason we moved to Cairns was for him to go into business with one of his brothers, and his brother is an engineer, I think a civil engineer to be more specific, and they started a business together.
Yeah,
and
it sounds like a good team up.
Yeah, so that's my parents.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How old were your folks when you were born, roughly?
Okay, when I was born, some quick math. I think I remember they were 23. Yes, 23.
Okay.
They were both born in 1953. I was born in 76.
So they were young.
Yep, they were young.
So you guys moved to Cairns.
Yep.
Or your parents did. How old were you at the
I
time?
was about 2 at that time.
Okay.
And then right before that, my next brother, I have 2 brothers.
Mm-hmm.
My next brother was born probably about 6 months before they moved to Cairns. So they moved to Cairns, 2 children, 2 young children. a couple of years after my second brother was born, my third brother was born. Second, third being. I have I have two brothers,
Yes.
but they are the second and the third in the family.
Got it.
Rather than the second and third brothers.
child.
Yeah.
Second brother.
Yeah.
Got
yeah.
it.
Whew.
That doesn't usually get complicated. That took a second there.
Yeah. It shouldn't be complicated. I'm overthinking it. So.
Oh my gosh. So did your mom keep teaching after you guys were born?
So after we were born, I'm not sure at the time that we were, for the small time that we were in Brisbane, I don't know if she taught at that time or not, but she worked at a daycare at a bowling alley for some time. So, yeah, I had forgotten that. But later on, when I was in second grade, she and my aunt started a school at a church that we went to, and my aunt, I think, taught everything under second grade, and I think my mum taught like third to seventh grade as this school got started. And I was in second grade,
Right.
so I had my aunt for my teacher initially, and then as I moved up, then I had my mother for my teacher for a while. I can't remember. Probably for a couple of years of my life, I had my mum as my teacher.
So is this the aunt married to your uncle who started the business with your dad?
It is actually, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys were just all around each other all the time.
All the time. And so my cousins, so they had three boys as well.
Oh my
and
gosh.
we were all right about the same age. Their oldest son, he's a year older than me. And then their second son is in between me and my brother, and their third son is the same age as my youngest brother. So there was six boys.
Pure chaos.
Yeah, yep.
Oh my gosh.
We had a couple of other friends at school as well, and we would call ourselves the trackmate team. I think it was named after like a label on a backpack or something. Like, hey, we should be cool. We're a little gang. What should we name ourselves? Oh, how about this? This is
Yeah.
let's do the trackmate gang or team or something. But yeah, we were thick as thieves. So I think that made for a very rich childhood. Just having our immediate family, but also the extended family.
Yeah. So you did the school thing with your aunt and your mom all the way up through seventh grade?
So as the school grew, they weren't the only two teachers for,
Okay.
That was just sort of the first year it was that way. I think my mom might have been my teacher in third grade and maybe fourth grade. But sort of during that time, the school grew. There were other teachers so it wasn't all third through seventh being all one class anymore. Right. I know for sure I did not have my mom in fifth grade and onwards. So I'm guessing for at least third, maybe fourth, it was my mom, and I was not her star student. Like when your mom's your teacher, you kind of probably take some liberties that she probably wished I didn't take. I just looking back at it now, if I was in her situation, it would be very frustrating to be at school all day, doing a full-time job, and then have to come home and have your son need to be motivated
Absolutely.
to do his homework.
Yeah.
And so it would, she would never have had a break.
Yeah, and the work literally came home with her.
Exactly.
She's bringing her customers into the house.
Exactly. And, so I think there were probably times at school where she probably just was like, we'll deal with you when we get home.
Yeah.
Like, you just go sit in a corner or something.
Oh my gosh.
She probably overlooked my problems at that time and for the sake of being able to give attention to these other students.
For survival's sake. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So
Now you're saying grade.
yes.
Is that how it is in Australia? Is it broken down into grades, or is it more the English style of primary and secondary and all that?
So there is primary and secondary. So this was primary school is grade 1 to grade 7.
Okay.
And yeah, uh, I've been Americanized to some extent, where I do this kind of translation
Yes.
of Australian things into American vocabulary.
Very generous of you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, it's somewhat selfish too, because it takes a lot of energy to explain myself every time.
Yes.
And so, as a matter of coping,
Yeah.
as a coping mechanism, I do the translation so that I don't have to, actually explain it every time. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
All right. After seventh, after primary school,
Yes.
did the school continue to expand
Yes.
all the way up? All
Yes.
through-
So I went to the school for my whole education. Primary and secondary education was at this school. First grade, I was at a public school, but from grade 2 to grade 12, I was at this school. So it did continue to grow. So initially, being first through seventh, it was a primary school.
Sure.
And then at some point in time, they added grade 8 and then grade 9, and each year they added another grade until they had.
As the boys kept growing.
Yeah. It was somewhat ahead of me. I think by the time I was in high school, we probably had to at least grade 10, or by the time I was starting grade 8, may have even been further, maybe. So. Yeah, the school grew, and so I went to that school my whole life. When I finished grade 12, there was probably roughly 300 people total in the school, from a preschool all the way through to 12th.
Yeah.
And
Were you a good student?
I was a good student.
I would
Academically, I got good grades, and I was not a good student in the sense of being studious.
Right.
I did not work very hard.
Yes.
I was fortunate to sort of naturally understand the things that I was being taught, and able to pass tests and things to get the work done.
Yeah, I expected that. I was
Yep.
assuming that was the case.
Yeah.
So
So good student is relative, right?
right. You got good grades.
Yes. And actually, because I was not very studious, when I went to university for the first time, I actually had to face that I would fail a subject. And I had never failed. I was probably worst case, 80% on a test or something.
Yeah.
Or but usually much better.
Yeah.
And so I needed to have done more work to have done better in at university, but I didn't know how to. I wasn't properly equipped because I hadn't needed to work before that.
Sure.
And it was also the first time to sort of face failure as something that I had never experienced before.
That's very healthy, or it could be.
Yes, it is healthy. I think some of the things, probably maybe a general pattern in my life is, through my childhood, there were maybe things I didn't have to face, but later on in life, I had to deal with them, and that might have been easier to have dealt with earlier in an environment where you have people around you, your parents, or to help guide you through these more
Sure.
difficult things.
So what was the class you almost failed?
No, there were a few subjects that I failed. I can't remember now. So I studied electrical engineering, and I actually did a double degree. So in 5 years, I could graduate with 2 degrees. One was in electrical engineering.
Of course you did, right?
Yep. And the other was in information technology, which essentially is computer science. It was just a different name for it.
Yep.
So the subjects that I found difficult were sort of these circuit design subjects where there are capacitors and inductors and resistors, and they use a lot of sort of metaphor to try and explain so you can kind of understand what these things do and maybe reason about them within your head. And I just didn't connect with those metaphors, and the math on its own that explains them. I'm sure if you get the metaphor, it makes a lot more sense and it's easier to connect with it. But
Yes.
so I was sort of just, I didn't have this context, this metaphor to really connect it all to.
Right.
And so it kind of went past me. And yeah.
So, forgive me for laughing,
Yeah.
but I know you well enough to know that metaphor in general isn't your thing. You're
Sure.
a very literal person.
Right, abstract metaphor is not is not my immediate go-to.
It seems odd that they would teach, because people with your temperament are the ones that you would assume would go into electrical engineering and designing circuits and things like that.
Yeah.
That seems like an odd teaching technique. We're going to use metaphor.
Yeah, well, so some of the metaphors are like this is a pipe or a hose that has water flowing through it, and so
Okay.
the water flowing is like a current.
Sure.
And then a resistor is sort
Right.
of the pipe gets a bit thinner, and then a capacitor is there's a bucket that needs to be filled along the way.
Sure.
And then inductors, I can't even remember the metaphor. I just didn't connect with them. So
Okay. So it's not like deep metaphors. They were
no,
just...
no, right. There's, it's not like unicorns and rainbows or something.
Right.
It's just, I mean, it's other physical metaphors that you may relate to in a physical sense.
In theory, you've seen this play out other places, and we're trying to... Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a little more sense.
Yeah. So,
Where was school? Where did you go?
okay. When it came time to go to university, I then traveled the 1,200 miles back to Brisbane.
Okay.
And so at 17 years old, I moved away from home. And I would say for my mother, that was probably one of the most difficult times for her.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing from my brothers or my dad or something like, yeah, things have changed since you've gone. Please come home as often as you can.
Wow. So mom didn't take it well, huh?
No, and to be fair, for me as well, moving away from home was exciting. It was a wonderful challenge, but this was now the time when there were things that I had to start to face that might have been better in retrospect to face at home. So,
Sure.
failing a
Right,
subject,
right.
or, even just sort of having to take care of myself and cook my own meals and clean my own sort of little apartment is an overstatement for what the place was. But I guess, yeah, for the first year when I moved away, I lived with an uncle and an aunt. That was my mom's brother and his family. I had some cousins that were about my age there as well. So I lived with them for a year. And then after that year, I moved into this, I will call it a one-bedroom apartment, but I will explain. It was this large house that had been divided into smaller
Sure.
individual apartments, let's
Yeah.
say. And many of the people living there were people who sort of couldn't afford much else. And so it happened that my mother's cousin sort of was the manager of this place, or the landlord, or something to that effect, and a place became available, and so I was able to stay there and have my independence, and but also had to start to take care of myself at that point.
Sure.
So,
I found it very jarring when I was at school and I realized I had to buy my own mustard.
yeah.
Did you have any experiences like that?
Yeah, sure. Like, you have to clean the bathtub. Like, that's a thing that has to happen, at some point.
So your parents didn't make you do that at home?
No, and I was, I guess I enjoyed the fact that, I was oblivious
Sure.
to these things happening, and to be honest, our family was so busy. I, looking back, I don't know where my mum found the time to make some of these things happen. So uh, maybe they didn't happen quite as often as everybody else's house either. But
Right.
and I know Saturday morning was generally a time for us to all like jump in and help with cleaning, but usually our help with cleaning was to pick up our feet while my mum vacuumed under us or something,
Sure.
while we're watching cartoons.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that was a new thing to learn. I had my grandparents would come and visit me from time to time, and my grandmother would generously clean my bathroom
Wow.
or prepare some meals, or like she would bring the ingredients. She'd bring the groceries,
Yeah.
and we would prepare some meals and put them in the freezer. And
That's sweet.
yeah, I don't think at the time I fully appreciated exactly what that was, but looking back, I can, that was a very generous thing to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, life back in Brisbane, 17, 18,
Yep.
19, 20, 21, something like that.
Yep.
What I know laws are different in Australia in terms of drinking
Oh, yeah.
and smoking and all that stuff.
So
How-
18 is the legal age for drinking.
Okay.
And the university I went to, I think every Thursday was the engineering society or something. I can't remember what engineering club or something would have a barbecue. Cookout, not the Southern style barbecue,
Okay.
but
Sure.
hot dogs and not hot dogs.
You would grill food outdoors.
We would grill food outdoors.
Yes.
And of course, this was a university. There was beer.
Yes.
And there was also bands that would play. And I loved music. I love music. And so I would go and see these bands. And by the time I was 18 years old, I would drink beer there as well. So so 18 is the legal drinking age. And
So you discovered you started drinking at 18 when it was legal.
yes, and I was very determined to be responsible with alcohol, at least during that period of my life. There was sort of somewhat of this healthy fear or respect that, I did not want to, break my own morals by abusing alcohol.
How was university life other than that? Did you,
Sure.
I mean, you were there for 5 years, you said?
Yeah, I was there for 5 years, and what I was leading to with part of my setup is that I moved away from my parents, moved to a bigger city, and I don't know that I was really able to identify it at the time, but I came to this place of loneliness to some extent, or isolation. Independence is one way to describe it, but
Sure.
it was also sort of just this isolation, and at the time I would not have been able to identify it as loneliness, but I think if I look back in life and describe it, loneliness is probably a good description.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. You've been surrounded by family and close family all of your life, effectively, to that point.
Yeah, and I don't think that feeling dominated my time. It was more like when the day was over and everything came to an end and there was silence, I was now sitting in loneliness.
Right.
I had friends. I made some very good friends during that time. As I said, music, I like music. It had been a big part of my life. And many of my friends that I made during that time were outside of university and related to the local music scene in Brisbane. I had many friends, and we would do wonderful things and have
Sure.
great times.
Sure.
Yeah, when it all came to the end of the day and you're laying there at night, it was probably loneliness. That was.
Did you play anything? Do you play any instruments?
So when I was, I guess I probably must have been about 7 years old. My parents, in particular, I remembered as my mother, encouraged us to learn piano. we were to take 3 years of piano lessons, and then we could choose another instrument.
Okay.
So I did that. I did my piano lessons for 3 years, and right around that time, my piano teacher started to learn saxophone. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I think I will do that." So, at about 10 years old, she was probably like a lesson ahead of me, and,
yeah.
and taught me her previous lesson or something. At 10 years old, probably had lessons for, I don't know, a year or so, just to sort of so I had the fundamental music theory
Yeah.
from the 3 years of piano.
Right.
Sort of, let's now learn how to translate that to a saxophone.
Yep.
And then here you go, you're off on your own.
Yeah, the mental game is done. It's just the physical translation that's the problem.
Yes, yeah. So saxophone, then I played for many years. If you were to ask my mother, I still play it, but I don't. I don't have one. It's her.
Oh, I want to see Ben Hockey play sax.
Yes, well, you and my mother. So. And it's not that I have no issue with doing it. I don't own one, so
But it's not the sort of instrument that when you're sitting around at university, you just whip it out and, hey guys, I learned this song today.
Right. There is one Kenny G, and that's enough.
Yeah.
So, so
Anyway.
yeah. So you don't pull out a saxophone at university,
Right. Sitting around on the green.
Right. The green in particular was called the kidney lawn where I was at.
Really?
Yeah, because it was shaped like a kidney.
Okay.
And,
Appropriate. Got it.
And that's where these barbecues and beer and bands would play every Thursday on the kidney lawn. So no saxophones in that case. So.
Oh man. Okay. So you were there for 5 years?
I was there for 5 years, and I can't remember which semester I failed the first subject I failed, but having failed that one subject, then I was sort of playing catch up from then on. I was taking an extra subject to make up for the one that I failed, which usually meant I failed another subject that semester, that then it just cascaded.
So did it ever occur to you that maybe you should drop a major and just only get 1 degree?
No, it didn't ever occur to me. I mean, I didn't ever consider that. I ended up graduating on time, but my real backup plan, rather than drop one, was, well, it'll just take another semester if it needs to, or over summer I'll take a course to finish. So one way or another I would manage to finish, and so I did finish, and I finished on time. So overall I was happy with that achievement.
Good.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you got done with school, was there a plan?
So the plan was to start a career, and
Good.
yes,
Good.
yep. Having done engineering and this computer science, I was looking for a job writing software.
And this is at what time? This is late 90s?
98, yep.
Okay.
I graduated in 98, so in 99, because our school year runs the calendar year, I started working for the state railway system, and I worked on a project for them. It was a traffic control system for the trains, and this was in a part of the country where there was no electric or automated signaling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So did you create that? Is that what you did?
I was not responsible for creating that. My specific role was to roll out that technology through the state of Queensland. Me and another guy our direct responsibility was to roll that out. He was the project coordinator and I was the technical coordinator, but it was just the two of us. So we would spend some time, we would travel over parts of the state and sort of actually have to go out to where these trains would come to basically larger stations where they would be sort of, trains would live semi-permanently when they're not out doing things.
Sure.
And we would have to deliver the laptops or sit with drivers and ensure that they understood the training and that kind of thing. Or actually, one part of the project was getting bids for a rugged laptop.
Yeah.
And at that time, that was kind of a novel idea to some extent at that time too. And so we had to come up with ways of sort of making this laptop durable under the conditions that it was being used in.
That's fun. Man,
Yeah.
super cool. So how long did you do that?
I did that for about a year.
Okay.
Then came where I moved to the United States.
Wait, so hold on.
Yes. We're going to have to back up and fill in how all of that came to be, I guess.
Yeah.
So, to back up, way up, probably when I was about 13 years old,
That's backing up a ways.
backing up quite a ways, there was a concert that was supposed to happen at the church that I went to. The concert was Carmen, Addicted to Jesus, that guy. When I say Carmen, some people think I say common,
No.
which is a totally different thing.
Yes, no. Carmen.
Thank you. Please
Yes.
translate. So where his story intersects with mine is when I was about 13 years old. He was touring Australia, and his mother passed away. And so unexpectedly, he had to end his tour, or he wasn't able to finish his tour. But if I remember correctly, there was just one or two more shows left in his tour. And he had this keyboardist, Wild Willie.
Okay.
So Wild Willie came and did a show for us.
Oh, nice.
And so it was sort of like just, cool keyboard trick, like shredding on a keyboard for an hour or so, however long that went on for, as sort of just a token of like, here's something.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. To this day, my mum reminds me that he promised he would be back there, and he hasn't kept good on that promise. And if I may just sort of jump ahead quite a few more years, I actually did a tour with Carmen at one point.
Did you really?
Yeah, and my mother kept nudging me. Ask him, remind him that he promised he would be back.
Oh my gosh.
And so I didn't remind him.
Yeah.
That just was a little too awkward. All right, so back to the story. Wild Willie played the show. As a part of that happening, our church sound system had to be set aside for a larger sound system to be installed.
Okay.
Or not installed, but used.
Yeah.
At the end of that concert, the church asked if anyone would volunteer to help stay around and put things back together. And I asked my parents, hey, can I stick around? Or maybe I didn't even ask, but I volunteered. And I was very curious about how all of this stuff worked. And so as the main person that understood this stuff at our church was putting it together, I thought, okay, if I'm very helpful, I can ask him questions, and I will have earned the opportunity for him to explain the answers to me.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I jumped in and did as many things as I could and asked him what significance that thing had as I was doing it. And,
Sure.
At that time, I think it just demonstrated that I had an interest in sound, in the sound equipment. Over the course of time, they taught me more things and was confident enough in me to allow me to operate these things on my own. And so, as I said, I played saxophone in school, church, youth group. I then also ended up doing sound at those things, obviously not at the same time, but all those opportunities also needed people to do sound. And
Sure.
So I would do sound, and I really enjoyed it. Then moving to university, I went to churches in Brisbane, and these churches were bigger and had many musicians. These people that I spoke of that were my friends in this local music scene, they were also people I met at church. And so the local secular music scene had a good group of Christian musicians, and I would enjoy going to their shows. They knew that I did sound at church, and they're like, hey, we noticed you like to come to our shows. We also noticed that you do sound, and we think you do a reasonable job of it. And the guy that is normally doing sound at the places we play is probably being paid in beer and has drunk his paycheck by the time we get on. So if you would, you won't have to pay to go to these shows anymore, and you could do our sound. So I did that for 5 years of university and another year of working for Queensland Rail. It wasn't all of that time. It probably took a year or two to establish that relationship. But then, so 3 or 4 years
Sure.
of doing that for those bands. One of those bands was a band called Beanbag. They had some interest. There was a record label here in Franklin, Tennessee, in Pop Records. Beanbag was the first band that they signed. Leading up to that, probably at the end of '98 or so, a few of these local bands sort of put on this showcase for these guys that were going to become the record label owners. They determined that they liked Beanbag. And it just so happened that I did sound at that show for Beanbag.
Nice.
And during the summer of '99, they flew them out, and we're going to sort of put them on at a few Christian festivals. So the band flew out, and I was like, oh, cool, good for them, you know. And they arrived, and these record label folks were like, where's that guy that was doing sound for you? They're like, he has a regular job. He's back in Australia. They're like, you were supposed to bring him with you. He, like,
That's awesome.
He's part of the show. Like, he's part of what makes the show happen. You know,
Right.
Obviously, people don't know who I am or anything like that. But,
Right.
And they're like, oh, okay. Just a minute. Can we borrow your phone?
Yeah, yeah. Hope you don't mind international charges.
Yeah. So I get this phone call. Hey, they said you were supposed to come with us. Is there any chance you can get time off work and fly out like tomorrow? And I'm like, I don't know, but let me talk to my boss and we'll see.
Yeah.
So I talked to the other guy that's doing this project with me, that the rollout of that traffic control system, and our boss, the boss of both of us, was out on vacation at the time. And so this guy being the project coordinator, he was the one I had to ask. So I asked him, I'm like, hey, look, I just got this opportunity to sort of, you know, go and be at some festivals in America for 2 weeks. And I need to take a couple of weeks off. What do you think? He said, well, since you'll be back before our boss gets back, as long as you are up to date with what he might expect you would have done by then, which it seems like you are, I guess you can go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool. So
That's awesome.
yeah. So I flew from Brisbane in Australia to Peoria, Illinois.
Oh my gosh. That's a
Some
transition.
30-something hours of flying.
Ugh.
Landed in Peoria. Someone in a van came and picked me up and drove me to Cornerstone Festival. I think it was then the next day we actually played Cornerstone. Maybe it was that night, like at midnight or something. Anyhow, it was a very long day for me.
Yeah. Jeez.
So that brought me over. We did that for a couple of weeks, and then we all came back to Australia and got back into our everyday lives for another 6 months.
Yeah.
And things went well. The record label liked the band. So by January of 2000, we were moving to America to do a tour. One of the record label executives was Peter Furler, who was, I'm not sure where the state of things are actually right now, lead singer for Newsboys.
Oh, okay.
And then the manager of Newsboys, Wes Campbell. Peter and Wes, and then another guy, Dale, were the three people that started the record label. So we came out, and Newsboys had a tour called the Love Liberty Disco Tour in the spring of 2000, and Beanbag was the opening band on that tour.
Cool.
Yeah.
How long of a tour was it? How many days?
Okay, so that tour, I want to say it might have been like 65 dates or something. That tour in the history, fast forward, I continued to tour for 10 years. To give context to what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
That tour was probably by far the hardest tour I ever did. And I think for everybody involved, it was probably the same way. One factor in that was the Newsboys had this air dome that we traveled with everywhere. in a large parking lot, they would set up this air dome, and we would back a semi-trailer into this air dome. It would unfold, and that would be a stage in the middle, and it was 360, so everyone was around the stage that was in the middle of this air dome, and there were very many challenges to having an air dome.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So you did the sound for Beanbag on that tour.
On that tour, I did the sound for Beanbag. We landed, and I had no agreement with them as to like, we'll pay you this much or anything like that.
You came to America for an extended tour?
Yep.
With no agreement.
Right. I was here for the adventure. So let me use that as a segue for my parents had that same thought.
Yeah.
This is a part of the story I really wanted to tell. My parents had that same thought, and so December is Christmas time, family time. We get together, and we're at the beach. And my parents know that my plans are in January. I am flying to the United States to go on this tour where I've made no agreements about what I would be paid or anything like that. I'm going on an adventure, and my thought process at the time, it would be an adventure that I would rather regret taking than regret not taking.
Sure, fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. So my parents are uncertain, of course, and we are in Brisbane. That they still live in Cairns to this day. We are 1,200 miles away from their home, and we are at this apartment at the beach. And we decide one night we want to get fish and chips. So we go to this fish and chips shop. We're ordering fish and chips, and my dad had this guy that he knew in South Africa that was on his mind. And my dad was thinking, I need to call this guy. I need to check in on him. At that time, there was sort of economic unrest in South Africa, and this guy would have, at times was considering like, how does he get out of South Africa? Perhaps if he suddenly had the need to. Sure. How does he sort of protect his wealth? Not that he was a very wealthy man, but just, how does he protect how does he manage to protect that if the economy suddenly collapsed? Or
sure.
So my dad had reason to be thinking of this guy and maybe call him and see if he could help him out or something. I can't remember exactly why. We get into the fish and chip shop, and this guy is there. We are not in our town.
Right.
He is not in his.
Yeah. Country.
And right. And we run into this guy. And so of course my dad's like, "Oh, hey, I've been meaning to call you. Why don't you come back and have dinner with us?
Wow.
You bring your fish and chips back to our house, and we'll just or back to our beach apartment, and we'll all just lay it on the table and we'll all eat together." So we get back, and while we're there, my dad's in conversation with this guy, and they're both sitting on a couch, and I'm sitting across from them, probably in another couch or something. And this guy stops like mid-sentence, and he looks over at me, and he's like, "You're about to have a big change in your life." And I'm like, "Mm-hmm." And of course, my parents and I know what this is about.
Right.
He goes on. I wish I would have maybe written this down or something, because I don't remember the specifics, but he goes on to say many things that, like, it's going to be a good thing. It's that there's a purpose to all of this. As a Christian, this is not especially ordinary, but this is not out of the realms of things that we consider could happen at any moment in our lives.
Yeah.
And for us, that's an indication of God's direction in what we're doing. So for my parents, that conversation was reassuring to them, and part of why it's okay that I didn't write it down was the purpose was maybe not the specific words that were said, but the purpose that we see in it was that it was to give them assurance that this move was what was supposed to happen.
Sure.
back to I'm moving to the United States without any agreement on what's going to happen. My parents had this uncertainty that was relieved by this encounter that happened. And
I can see how that would happen.
yeah. So they're still naturally hesitant, but
Sure.
By our standards, they were willing to be obedient and to what we believe was God's calling and purpose.
Yeah.
So we land. So there were 4 guys in the band. 3 of them were married and had their wives come with them. So that's 7, and I made 8. And the band had found management, and we landed in the manager's office in his probably not much more than a 15 by 15 room, if that. And we all slept on air mattresses, or the floor or something was where we landed when we arrived.
Wow. All in one room, effectively?
Yes, and there's like 8 of us living on his floor. So, of course, he's highly motivated to get us shows.
Absolutely.
So that we could be out of his living room and keep his wife happy.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so it was a short time after that we started the tour, and leading up to the tour, which was a week or 2 weeks or whatever, I was like, so guys, I came out here and I don't get any money. How is this going to work out? There's kind of 2 ways I see this could happen. One way is you could kind of count me as a part owner of the band, and so I'm taking a risk up front, but long term, if there's some great success, I have a percentage of that as recognition for the risk and burden that I carried up front.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have to pay me something.
Right. Yeah.
And they're like, okay, all right, we get it. The whole give you a percentage thing would be a little unusual. So we're going to take the route of offering something based on what we're going to get paid. We can offer you $50 a week. I'm like, okay, $50 a week. All right. Fortunately, very soon after we had that conversation, the Newsboys needed someone to run that big spinning drum riser that they had.
Okay.
And so that became my job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I ran this drum riser through the mud and the dirt of parking lots around 65 malls in America.
Yeah.
That was essentially what gave me some money to live on. In addition to that, part of the way through the tour, a friend of mine that had been doing sound for Sonic Flood got off the tour, and he had suggested to them that I would be a good replacement for him, and so I ended up working for them as well.
You were working for everybody.
I was working for everybody. I was getting $50 a week from Beanbag, $50 a show for Sonic Flood, and $650 a week for Newsboys.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was a fun time, difficult but fun.
Yeah.
And the good thing about it is that every tour after that was much easier.
Yeah. I would imagine.
Yeah. After that tour ended, Newsboys also owned a production company, a sound and light company that did the sound and lights for a number of festivals that happen over the summer. Mm-hmm. They needed somebody to work for them over the course of the summer festivals that year. So I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Sure.
And so
don't have anything else going on.
Right. So that kind of became a trend where I moved more towards this production company and away from Beanbag, and they kind of started, they did their things independently and had their tours and stuff. But by that time, we had got our own 2-bedroom apartment.
The band?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there were...
With spouses?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
It's very interesting.
Oh.
I had 1 bedroom was me and 1 couple. And
Oh.
the other bedroom was two couples.
Oh.
And the living room was the single guy in the band. And actually, by that time, we often had one or two other touring people stay with us.
Oh my
So
gosh.
the way I usually tell it is that we had 10 people in a two-bedroom apartment for quite some time.
I'm not trying to get weird or
Yeah.
anything, but how does that work?
Well, it works differently for different couples, let's say. One couple were newlyweds.
No. Oh.
For them, these long drives late at night, they might find a private spot in the van or something.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah. For the other couples that had been married a little longer,
Just wait till everybody else
were
goes
more,
out?
They were more discreet.
Okay.
I can't, I don't know.
Right.
Because they were discreet.
Right.
So they either abstained or I don't, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They never came back from a run of shows hearing about what any of those couples were
Sure.
potentially doing.
Okay, sorry. That was
No. I mean, this is that is the reality of
that's just a bizarre life choice. I guess you do what you can with what you got, but also, man, wow.
yeah, we
I would not still be married if I ever proposed that to my wife.
yes, I'm so I from what I know, I don't think any of them are either.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Moving right along.
Yeah.
So you were working for the production company.
Yes. Worked for the production company. During the summer it was festivals. The spring and the fall there was usually some tour we would do.
You just got along going from tour to tour and
Yep.
being with different bands and all sorts of things like that.
Yes, and the whole time was sort of connected with Newsboys because they owned the company, and
Right.
often that company was doing the production for the Newsboys tours. And while for the most part I wasn't directly working for them, we were related in what we were doing.
Sure.
And it did lead to where, for some time, I worked directly for them doing monitors. So, for those that are not familiar, doing monitors is doing the sound for the band themselves.
Yeah.
And
You're usually off stage left or
we're
right.
usually stage left, out of sight.
Yeah.
When the band sort of is looking over and giving signals to somebody about whether they want something turned up or not, or whether you're doing a good job or not. Sometimes you get those other kinds of signals.
Yeah.
I'm the guy.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that those are aimed at.
Got
But yeah, so I did that for a little while as well,
So you did this for 10 years?
with a small gap. I'd been burned out for a little bit, sort of done the hardest tour in the history of Christian touring
Sure.
that I know of.
Yeah.
Living with 10 people in a 2-bedroom apartment, various other factors played into that. I was just kind of burned out. And in the April of 2002, I had made plans to return to Australia at the end of a particular tour that I was on. The tour was coming to an end, and we were driving back into Nashville. And I woke up in the morning, checked my phone, and my mother had called me to let me know that my grandmother had passed away. And so I was like, well, okay, I'm glad I'm already planning to go back, because I'm not conflicted in any way at all to have to think about what I'm going to do.
Right.
In addition to that, the day that I landed back in Australia, my first nephew was born. Both of these things were sort of strong indicators to me that I was doing a thing I was supposed to be doing at that time.
Sure.
I then found a local sound company to do some work for there. And I just sort of, spent some time recuperating, had some fun adventures. I worked for a theater company, which is a lot different to touring with rock bands.
Yes.
A theater company, you're in the one location for a few weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And so that's actually a much easier job.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that for a while. It was probably about a year and a half later, I was kind of got the itch to do something more meaningful. And I was preparing to go back to university. I had applied to go back and study psychology because that interested me.
Yes.
And at that same time, Newsboys were coming to play a festival in Australia. I was like, okay, I know that if I happen to run into my friends that are part of the crew for them, one guy in particular, there's a strong possibility that if he has some opening, he'll probably offer me something.
Yeah.
So I think to myself that, like, all right, I'm not going to try and contact this guy. It just, if it happens, it happens. Otherwise, I've started the ball rolling. I've applied to go back to university and had been accepted to study psychology. As things were meant to be, this guy did reach out to me and was like, we're about to start a spring tour. Do you want to come back and be on that tour? And I'm like, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm like, yeah, I just, I need, you guys got to pay my ticket to get back there.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that tour, there's no commitment beyond that. So, we did that, and we did that tour. And, because I was sort of expecting to be here temporarily, I didn't have a cell phone. We were coming towards the end of that tour, and a friend of mine that I had toured with in the very early days of my touring he was working for Toby Mac at the time, and Toby needed someone to do monitors. This friend of mine did not know that I was... Somehow he had some inkling that I was around, and he called the hotel that I was staying at on my days off. He did not know which hotel I was he just knew that Newsboys would typically put people in a particular hotel, and he looked at their schedule.
Wow.
And found that we would be home on a certain date. He called that hotel and asked to be put through to my room, and he leaves a message.
Yeah.
Now, in the hotel room, nobody checks their messages.
No. No.
I come back, the light's flashing. The light's always flashing. There's always a message. It's not for me. But I checked the message.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, hey, can we meet? And so I met with him. We talk about this thing that he has going on. I'm like, well, I'm on this tour for a couple more weeks. I won't be done. And I tell him what date I'm done. He's like, well, that's perfect. 2 days after that is when ours starts. I'm like, okay, all right. So I rolled off that Newsboys tour straight onto Toby Mac's tour.
Yeah.
And for the next 5 years, I worked for Toby doing monitors for him. And life is a little bit different working directly for an artist compared to sort of working for the production company.
Yeah.
So
Part of the family.
It really is part of the family.
Yeah.
So I spent 5 years doing that. And so that kind of rounded out my 10 years of touring. And yeah, many good times with Toby and all of his crew and his band.
Sure.
He's not a one-man show. He certainly treats everybody as part of what he's doing and as one big family. And that was sort of one of the things that I really appreciated about my time with him, is that we did have these really good relationships, and that even today, these relationships still stand for me.
Sure.
And I think the circumstances of touring lead to almost daily opportunities for people to demonstrate loyalty and for relationships to be reinforced. And that means a lot to me, is loyalty and sincerity. And I think I wasn't able to describe that in that time, but looking back on it, I realized that was what made those relationships meaningful. And yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what pulled you off the road?
So that's a great question. While I was touring with Toby, I met my wife, and uh,
I love this story so much.
a friend of hers knew Toby and Toby's assistant at the time. This girl's name was Joanna. Joanna and Rachel lived in Tulsa, in Oklahoma. Rachel is my wife. They lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and if we were anywhere within 5 hours drive of Tulsa, Joanna would turn up looking like she didn't care to be there. And so, okay, you just drove 5 hours and you're really cool, and you just,
Yeah.
it's Toby Mac, I'm just, whatever. But over the course of time, she had managed to get Toby's assistant's phone number or something, and so Joanna would let us know that she was coming or something. And so, when you tour, there are people that you get to know in certain places. Just
Sure.
it's the oddest reasons or whatever why that is. And this was sort of a case of that. We knew Joanna, and so. We're like, yeah, sure. There'll be a few tickets waiting for you. Come on backstage, whatever. And
Yeah.
and these are kind of these people sort of become our friends on the road, and we are glad to see them, despite how cool they want to look or whatever.
Yeah.
So Joanna had brought her friend Rachel with her. Rachel was 16 years old when she started coming to these shows, and I was certainly it was not suitable for
Yes.
for me to have any thought or like I just it was like, okay, that's a 16-year-old, and I'm working in the Christian music industry. I'm a Christian myself. I'm not, this is not something that is appropriate for me to pursue or. It was just so obvious. It wasn't even like I had to hold back some desire that was within me, right?
Yeah.
It didn't exist.
It's not a thought that really even occurs.
No, it doesn't occur. And so some time goes on, and Joanna is coming to shows, and Rachel's coming to shows, and when I say that, this may be 3 or 4 shows in a year that we're within striking distance of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So it's not constant. It's just a few times a year we would see these people. Joanna and I became friends, and so we would sometimes talk when not on the road. And there was one Valentine's Day where Joanna calls me and she's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm doing fine, but since you're calling on Valentine's Day,
Right.
I think there's more to the question."
Yes, yeah.
And so I just kind of went into this, just a short response, but like, I'm at a point in life where I'd like to be married. I would like to have like to be in a meaningful relationship that I hope would lead to marriage. And because the future I see ahead of me is being married and having children, and I think that's the life ahead of me. So, but I'm not there at the moment. And she's like, "Well, you should give Rachel a call." And I'm like, "No, Rachel's 16. And it's like, well, a few years had passed. And she's like, "No, Rachel is not 16. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, all right." So, but I'm like, well, I still don't think it's appropriate because, it may look inappropriate if I'm pursuing this girl that I have met through concerts and, the typical stereotype of that type of thing. I'm just like, I don't think it's even appropriate for me to be pursuing that. And I said, however, and she had told me Rachel had just broken up with her boyfriend. And I am like, if you would like to tell Rachel that she could call me, and I would be glad to sort of encourage her that, hey, look, it seems to be American culture is that you've always got to be attached to someone. Through high school, you need to be dating or whatever. And I was like, that's a myth. And so I was like, I'll just let her know that, hey, it doesn't have to be that way. You can give her you have my number, you can give it to her. And if she finds it appropriate to call me, that's the kind of conversation we're going to have.
Right.
I get a phone call a little while later, and Rachel's like, "Hey, Joanna said you wanted me to call you. And I'm like,
Thanks,
oh,
Joanna.
Oh, no, that's not what I said. Here's what I said.
Yeah.
You broke up with your boyfriend. Just know you don't have to always be dating or in relationships.
Sure.
It's perfectly fine to just be happy and be single. And she's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool, whatever. So sometime after that, we were coming close to town. So she texts me, hey, could we get in? Could I bring a few friends? I'm like, sure, whatever. And so at that point is sort of Rachel and I we start really sort of having this communication more and more often and get to know each other a little better. And
Yeah.
and then, yes, we sort of develop this romance. And but she's still living at home at the time. And full disclosure, I'm 11 years older than my wife. And I think, okay, so we're not yet at the point where we have sort of committed to a relationship.
Sure.
We haven't, we've just talked so far.
Yeah.
But it's leading there.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know what, I need to go to Tulsa and visit with Rachel's family and present myself to them.
Yeah.
And state my intent and ask that that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be on Dateline. So, so over the course of the time when Rachel had been coming to concerts, sometimes her mom would come
Sure.
and she had mentioned, oh, you should come and have breakfast at our house sometime, which to me is kind of odd, but like, why are you going to someone's breakfast except that you stayed overnight as well? So I took that as an invitation that I would be staying overnight.
Right.
And that I was welcome to come and visit. Of course, her mom had no idea that
That's what you meant.
that things were heading in this direction.
Got it.
Although there should have been a few hints when Rachel was always on the phone with me and her mom would say, oh, is that Ben? Oh, tell him hi.
Yeah.
Oh, you've gone over your minutes this month? Okay, we need to get you some more text messages on the plan.
Wow.
Yeah. So her mom did know we were communicating a lot.
Yeah, she can't claim too much ignorance here.
No. But I don't want to say too much. She'll probably listen to the
Yeah.
podcast. So yeah, I went to Tulsa, presented myself, and initially Rachel and I had the conversation that like, okay, we're on the same page about
Right.
what is happening here.
Yes, yeah.
And yes, we are. And okay, well then I need to talk to your family and I need to make sure that, they're not going to call the police or something. So, so we did that. And I think it caught Rachel's mom off guard, but she agreed.
That's awesome.
Whether it was reluctant or not, but she agreed. And so I had also talked to Rachel's dad. Her parents were divorced, but they lived in the same town. And so Rachel's dad was a chef at a local restaurant. And Rachel would wait tables at that restaurant at that time. And so he had me come and sit in Rachel's section. And he sat me down and was like, okay, we're going to order from Rachel and she's going to serve us some food. And he's like, we have a specialty at this restaurant. Our specialty is lamb's fries and turkey fries. Rachel, could you please explain to Ben what these are? And it turns out these are testicles that get deep fried.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, okay, this guy's going to make me eat these things. So we snack on them while we're chatting away, and he's getting to know me.
How are they?
They're fine. It's deep fried. It's I think the thought of like the texture of those things would be the main concern. But once something's deep fried, it's
all the same.
It's chicken nuggets or whatever. It's everything tastes like chicken. So, so we're having conversation and we get done with that conversation and he says, all right, well, kids, we're going to have breakfast in the morning. You're going to meet me at this place across town that you're going to meet me at 6:00 in the morning. Don't be late. I'm like, okay, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, so many things, like I'm dependent on Rachel for transportation here because I'm staying at her house and I'm like, so, we had better not be late because I'm going to be the one
Right.
that's going to lose in this case.
Yes.
And you had better be up on time because your mom doesn't want to find me knocking on your door, looking around your bedroom, like, before everybody else in the house is awake.
Right, right.
That doesn't look good.
No.
So you had better be up and ready to take me so that we're on time because I got to talk to your dad after we've just had this night of eating testicles.
Yes.
And so we arrive at the place and I'm just like, okay, this guy's making me jump through hoop after hoop after hoop. I have just got to get this out of the way because I'm not. This could go on forever, and he's having a lot of fun with
Yes,
this.
yes.
So we sit down and we order breakfast, and then I'm like, well, I'm in town because Rachel and I are talking, and we want to start a relationship, and so I want to make sure that you're okay with me dating Rachel.
Yeah.
And he breaks down crying and he's like, I would just be so happy. Yeah. And so I'm like, yes, I like no more hoops.
Yeah.
I'm done.
No more testicles.
Yeah. No more testicles to eat. And, the restaurant he worked at is next door to the house where Rachel's mom lives. So later that day, he calls me over and, Rachel and her younger brother came with me. He's like, all right, kids, go back home. I'm here. He just wanted to talk with me. And he tells me at that time, he's like, sorry. Anyhow, I'm very emotional because he passed away. And so what he had to say was meaningful, and it's usually quite humorous when I tell this. But so he says, I think you're going to marry my daughter. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah. Can I go on a date first?
Yeah, I'm like, my intentions are good, I promise you.
Yeah.
But we're just getting started here.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, well, God told me you're going to marry my daughter.
Wow.
And so he gave me an 8x10 of Rachel. He wrote on the back of it. So he turned out to be right.
Yeah.
We did marry. And all of this is to answer the question of why I stopped touring. We got married and I continued to tour while we were married. I was very fortunate that Toby has his own family that wanted him home.
Right.
So there was that pull on him that I got to have the benefit of as well. So his wife didn't want him gone 3 or 4 weeks straight without coming home.
Yeah.
So very typically we would leave home on a Wednesday night and be back on a Monday morning. That would be for the duration of a tour. And then in between tours, we may not have a show for weeks at a time. Fortunately, I was on a salary, so the number of shows that we did or when they were, I had a steady income,
right.
Regardless of how often that happens. So Rachel, I would be gone from my wife, but then I could be home for 3 weeks at a time. Eventually, we came to have our first child, and independently of having the first child, Toby did this co-headlining tour. And we had Toby's tour manager and the tour manager for the other artist. And in order to really make sure that we were demonstrating that this was an equal co-headline tour, we were equally organizing things. But the problem with that is that information then has to be shared. And one tour manager is using like a FileMaker Pro database on his Mac computer.
Yeah.
And the other tour manager is using Excel spreadsheet on his Windows laptop.
Yeah.
And these things just don't share that easily the way things were at this point in time. And so I'm like, well, duh, like there's this thing called the internet and that's what it's made for.
Right.
And so I had this idea of like, well, we need both of them need to be able to enter data on a website, and then that would allow anybody else who was associated with the tour to read that data later on.
Yeah.
Like this is how it works.
Yes.
Like, so having a background in software, I get this itch to make this thing and think, okay, well, it's been 10 years since I've written software. The industry has moved on. I need some catching up to do.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of the time while I'm on tour, the afternoons when sometimes you would have the free time in the afternoons after you're all set up and everything. I had a few hours in the afternoons where I could maybe brush up on my software skills. So I'm doing that probably for maybe a year. I use some particular software libraries for building applications, and they were open source, which means that anybody can see that code and contribute to it. And so I got involved in that community of open source people as well, and ended up that larger companies that would use these libraries might ask some of the people in that community if they knew of anybody that knew how to work with these libraries. So I developed a reputation where I was someone that knew how to work with these, even though I had not worked in software development for 10 years. And so coincidentally, at sort of a few months after we had our first child, I also got an offer to move to New Jersey and work for a company building an application with these libraries.
Yeah.
And so that is how I ended up finishing my time in the music industry and going back to writing software. And it could look like that because I had a baby, I pursued that, but it wasn't how it was. But as a result of it happening, certainly I think things have been of benefit to our family.
Sure.
To have made that change.
Yeah. And being home more means you have more babies.
Yes. So we now have 5 children.
Yes.
So that was 2009. Our first child was born. And that was in January. And in April, we ended up making the move to New Jersey. In like 1 week, we made that decision and made the move. And I have taken my wife and my family on some wild rides.
Yeah.
But it's been of benefit and you know, that's what makes life. That puts some color in our life.
Yeah.
So
And now you're out in Colorado.
now we're out in Colorado. Worked in software development for a little while. Ended up coming back to Nashville and continued working in software development. We moved so quickly. We didn't sell our house. We just rented it out. And we had always we loved living around here. So we moved back. And but then eventually I got an offer to go and work for a big company, Google, and and we had to move to Colorado to do that, and so that's where we live now. We've been there for the past 4 years, and we enjoy it there. We have friends there that we've made, and a great community.
But not friends like me.
Not friends like you, that's for sure. No, there is only one.
That's right.
But enough about you.
But enough of that. Oh, man.
I think Jonathan said that in his, so I was looking for a chance to throw that in.
Oh, man. Oh, man. That's awesome. What are you afraid of?
Oh, okay. So I knew you had 3 questions. Just to preface this, I knew you had 3 questions.
Yeah.
And I've listened, of course, to some of your podcasts, but I didn't pay attention to what 3 questions were.
That's okay.
And no, well, I'm happy. Like I intentionally am glad that we're shooting from the hip here.
Good. Okay.
But at the dinner table the other night, the kids have these questions in a jar that they pull out, and from time to time we ask one of the questions. That was one of the questions. I am afraid of being wrong or being misunderstood.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah. And my wife's immediate response to that, so the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is very interested in the Enneagram, listens to lots of podcasts, and I find the information helpful. I'm not, but so if you're familiar with the Enneagram, I am a 5.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Well, yeah, that's what 5s are afraid of." And I'm like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm afraid of being wrong or being misunderstood / wrong. Like,
Yeah.
that's my greatest fear. I think that comes because if I'm misunderstood, it challenges the validity of our relationship. If you don't, if we have a misunderstanding, then our relationship may not be as deep as I thought it was, or something. And so that scares me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you regret?
That is a harder thing for me to answer. Okay, it's hard because I live in my head,
Mm-hmm.
not so much in my heart. Regret is something that I try my best to not have happen in my life. I regret is hard to deal with, so I do my best to avoid it. Or if I find myself leaning towards where, oh, I wish I would have done whatever, or I wish my life was different in some way,
Sure.
I do my best to try to make that change.
Mm.
So that may be my answer. Very, very. Maybe I should be a politician where I don't answer the answer.
No. It's good. People have
Yeah.
all kinds of responses to that, and
Yeah.
that's the point.
Right.
Who is God?
So I have done some thinking on this recently, and as you know, I'm in town. There was a friend had a funeral,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was an opportunity for me to stop and think about who is God, how is God honored in these types of things. I'm probably going to sidestep the question a little bit, but the thing that I want to tell you in response to that is that I believe that we're all created in God's image, and that there is a part of God inside every one of us, or there's God can be revealed through any one of us, some part of God. And just as a rainbow is sort of the dispersion of light and it breaks out into its various colors, components, I believe that God is light and that each one of us has a color to show. A part of that light shines through each one of us. And so, you know, I don't know that I have a concrete answer to who God is, but I have come to this realization that the image of God is in all of us, and the more that I look for that, the more that I can find out who God is.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Ben, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
I don't know about you. I'm ready for lunch. I have to say, I think my favorite part of Ben's story, the best part of his story, this part that gets him excited and emotional, is falling in love with his wife and then having kids and being the man he clearly was designed to be. Also, did you catch how smart he is? Ben, don't listen. I know you'll hate this. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And he is so kind and generous. And once upon a time, he was trying to help me get work in the software industry that I was massively unqualified for. But he was such a good cheerleader and so excited for me. He is just one of the best humans on the face of this planet. And if you get a chance, You should get to know Ben Hockey a little bit better. If you enjoyed this episode, if you would like to know what Ben looks like, you can find out by going to our website. The site is www.butenoughAbout.me. We've got all the portraits I make of everyone that comes on the show, as well as past episodes, all the way back to the beginning. And there's a way for you to contact me there if you want to let me know what you're thinking, or better still, if you know someone who should be on the show, get them in touch. They can get in touch through the website. It's very, very easy. Or just email me, tyler@butenoughAbout.me. Either one of those works fine. Also on the website, down toward the bottom, you can connect with the two folks that have helped me make this show happen, those being Mr. Jace Hackman. He is the musician that gave us all of the bumper music. You can hear more of his work at jacehackman.com. And Mr. Casey Jones, who helped me design the logo and made sure that I knew what colors looked good. His website is iamcaseyjones.com. Also, we're on the socials at Instagram and Facebook. Both of those are /But Enough About Me podcast. And other than that, I have stickers. Oh, that's right. I have stickers. They're 4 inches by 4 inches. They're bright yellow, and they've got half of my dumb head on them. And Casey designed them. They're fantastic. They work great on bumpers and the backs of laptops and water bottles. And I'm looking at one on my camera case. Guys, I got a few of these left, and they can't live in my house anymore. They need to go to you guys. So if you want a sticker, they are absolutely free. Just let me know you want one. Drop me a line on the website. Email me, whatever you want to do. Let me know. I will mail this to you free of charge, no expense for you. I'm just excited to get these out of my house. Sometime in the next 2 weeks, guys, go find somebody you don't know very well. Buy them a cup of coffee or a glass of whiskey and ask them to tell you their story. My name is Tyler Andrews, but enough about me.